Hey everybody, welcome. It's another episode of the Uncanny Spirits Club, and I've got something interesting that I'm looking forward to for you folks tonight. Um, I'm pretty sure I'd have to go back. Let me adjust my camera a little bit lower. There we go. Um, I think I've reviewed a few Jameson things in the past. I'm pretty sure I did the stout cask, um, and probably something else. I don't know for sure off the top of my head. But this was new in my local grocery store, and this is the Jameson Triple Triple. Now, what does that mean? It is triple distilled and matured in triple casks. It's been matured in three different barrels: a bourbon barrel, a sherry cask, and a chestnut cask, which I don't think I've ever had anything from a chestnut cask before.
Mm.
I don't think I've had anything that was also initially both in a bourbon and a sherry cask back to back before either. I feel like there's maybe one thing that should be sticking out in my mind, but I can't name it off the top of my head. That's how unoften that has happened so far. Um,
Seldom.
oh yeah, I'm sure there's better words than that. I just kind of I just salad everything. Salad. Um, it's 80 proof. It is 28.99, so definitely affordable. So if it's good, it'll definitely be on the list. It looks like it's a twist cap and not a cork. Um, and I don't know exactly how long they've matured it in these barrels and casks. I don't know. I had to do a lot of searching online to try to find some information. I couldn't find anything on the specific bottle. I mean, I found a lot of people selling it, a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of good things about it, but I didn't find anything about the age of it. So I eventually looked up just how old Jameson standard is, and generally it's between 3 and 4 years, which is their minimum. So I'm guessing that each of these casks got about a year. So it's probably about 3 years old. Um, I'm listening because my daughter just went on a coughing spree. Usually it's one cough and then she's done, but she just coughed a bunch of times. So might have to give her the Vicks. That's not an endorsement. Please don't sue me, Vicks. Um, but we're gonna pop this open and see how this goes. See how it smells here. I can smell it already. It smells very bright. A little fuming. A little.
Mm.
Just a smidge.
I love you, me.
No, that was a combination of dry throat and sniffing 3 or 4 times in a row without giving my nose a break. It does smell good though. So let's pour out a bit. Generous dram. Should be good there. Cover that back up. Most Jameson does not use a cork because it is lower end as far as the price and everything. It's about mid shelf generally if you go into the local stores here in the United States. That doesn't mean it's bad or anything like that. You can find a lot of things that don't use a cork. Most Japanese whiskeys, unless the really high end particular stuff, don't use cork. So it's just something to note that most Jameson, like I said, aren't going to have a cork to begin with.
We won't run into the corking issue we had with my mom.
The bamboo that
Yeah.
kind of fell apart a little bit.
This does smell good.
It smells sweet, nice and sweet. Now that's kind of a characteristic of Irish whiskeys. They're a bit sweeter to me on my palate. A little sweeter, a little. I've said it before. They have a clean taste to them. Not that it means that they're more that other whiskeys are filled with contaminants or anything, but it's a difference in the water that they use. I think
Irish Spring.
every like if you go to Scotland, depending on which region of Scotland you're at, the water that they use is going to be a big determinator about how the Scotch turns out. Like the Islay Scotch has a certain taste to it, both because of the peat moss, and the being right there on the ocean. Whereas if you're in like the Highland Scotches or something like that, you're gonna get something different. The Speyside Scotches are different. So same thing with the Irish whiskey. It's the difference in the water, I think, that gives it that quality. Not every one of them tastes like that, but the majority of it. And I think it's a hallmark of most Irish whiskeys that I've enjoyed because it's something that kind of connects them all. Um, but we're gonna stop talking about just water and things, and we're gonna have a sip and see how this tastes.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. I can taste the sherry cask. I can taste the bourbon influence.
There's a lot going on.
The bourbon influence comes right up afterwards. It's a really heavy wood sensation that comes. It's not unpleasant, but it is different. It's not something you necessarily expect when you're drinking an Irish whiskey.
No, it's forceful.
It takes quite a bit of the sweetness off. Now the sweetness is there, and it kind of sits around the outside of your tongue, like I can sit kind of there. This is also, it's not a dry whiskey. I feel like it's making my saliva just kind of start going. So this is something that you'd want to pair with another food, either something really rich that would accent that kind of saliva thing, or something that's a little bit on the drier side, so you can kind of balance the two. I don't usually get too much into food pairings with these, but every once in a while you get one that's really dramatic, like it's making me want to drool right now. Not because it's like, oh, it's so delicious, but just it's producing saliva by a lot. It's sloshing around my mouth practically. Um, I'm not. I feel like I'm getting something with the chestnut, but it's not as dramatic. There might be a little nuttiness in there, but it's not coming to the forefront as much. The bourbon part, I think, once you get past that initial, the sherry cask feel, I think the bourbon cask is kind of like muscling its way through like a typical American, just being like, hey, it's my turn. So I'm going to try a second now that my palate's the way it is and see what we can get from there. Now that taste has a little bit more balance between the sherry and the bourbon cask, but it's definitely a lot less sweet. The sweetness is going away pretty quick as my palate is adjusting to this.
It has like a sour note to it.
Mm-hmm.
Very sour.
It's got a bourbon sour mash definite feel to it.
Yeah, like a corn mash or something. Yeah.
A lot less barley, which is where a lot of the sweetness comes from. The sweetness comes from the barley. If you've had like barley wine, like beer and things like that, it's heavily sweet. Not sweet like syrupy sweet, but it's definitely like makes a difference. The barley wines and the barley heavy beers that we've had on the channel here have been very, very good. And it's mostly to do with the fact that they're sweet, but they're not sugary sweet. It's from barley's natural sweetness. And I think this, you're getting a lot from the bourbon cask. It's really, really getting in there. I'm not tasting anything from the chestnut, but to be fair, I don't know what that would taste like on its own because I've never had one in a cask like that.
I've never had a chestnut at all, so.
Now, the other thing about that, too, is it's a little uneven in this because what they do is they say on the back, we introduced whiskeys matured in a combination of bourbon and sherry casks with a portion further matured in chestnut casks. So the chestnut cask influence is going to be smaller to begin with. Maybe in higher quantities, it threw off the whole batch and something went not so good with it. So maybe they had it smaller. Maybe it's too subtle for me to tell. It is definitely something different that I didn't expect from Jameson, though.
Yeah.
Because I've had, like I said, I've had their original, which is decent. I've had the stout cask edition, where it's matured in former stout casks, and that was still Jameson. It still had a definite Jameson quality. Um, and this is something different. I really like this because it's not quite as sweet. Although I feel like if I had a couple of these, if I have had a couple of drinks, not like a couple of these, I'm sure that would really make a big difference, but a couple of these, more modest, that after the second one, I'd probably be like, okay, I think I'm finished. The sourness would be a bit, if I had any more, I think that would probably be enough for me. Um, that doesn't mean that it's bad, but that kind of brings it down a little bit to the point where I'm kind of like, the more you drink of it, the more I think that would start getting into your mouth. And I'm not into sour tasting things as much. Excuse me. But it is good, and for $28.99, it's really not a bad price for that for something unique. Um, I looked on when I was looking online to try to find the age. I found a lot of people selling these for a lot of different prices. Um, the reasonable people were selling it close to what I paid for it. I saw a couple that were $29.99, a couple that were like $30.99 because of different places in there. Some have built-in taxes, some places don't. Some are obligated to charge more because they have to because of state regulations. I did see some website trying to sell a bottle of this for $253 and change. And I thought to myself, is it that good? Is it going to be the best thing ever in my hand here? Can't be. And it's not. And that's not a knock against it. That's just some people will value things higher than others because they think, oh, it's new, maybe it's rare, maybe it's something that not a lot of people are going to be able to get a hold of. Maybe the market that website caters to doesn't have direct access to this. But I just walked into the grocery store and they had a huge display full of it. They had like regular Jameson on the side and they had this on the other side. Because even though it's the end of February, they're already getting ready for St. Patrick's Day. They've got their Guinness displays out. They've got their corned beef and sauerkraut and everything all laid out, ready to go now, just like Christmas. Like it's 5 weeks in advance. I don't know, when is St. Patrick's Day? Probably not that soon.
It's 3 weeks away.
Yeah. So I guess I'm probably just overreacting.
Yes.
But I didn't expect it.
Cabbage, not sauerkraut.
But they had sauerkraut at the
Yeah.
place because I don't know. Maybe they think that it was cabbage. It technically still is cabbage, but
It was cabbage.
it was cabbage. Um, but anyway, before I get too off the subject into silly territory, the Jameson Triple Triple, it's 80 proof. In my local market here in Ohio, it's $28.99. I think it's worth the price, honestly. If it was more than that, I might feel a little about it because while it is decent, there's some things that are kind of holding it back, like that sourness and the way that bourbon cask feel just kind of shoves aside everything else that it's got going for it. Um,
I wish I had more sherry.
I expected a bit more from the sherry cask because I've had that with a lot of scotches, and I can tell a sherry cask scotch versus like a peated scotch versus a Speyside scotch. But you get that first hint of the sherry cask, and you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. And then the bourbon's just like, get out the way, smack. All bourbon all the time. So, and almost nothing from the chestnut that I can taste anyway. But I'm sure it's making a difference. Maybe it does something to it that keeps the other two from getting into a drunken brawl on the tavern floor. But that's it. $28.99, 80 proof, the Jameson Triple Triple. Worth the price, I think. And I like it. Not as much as I thought I would, but I am surprised in a positive way. So I think it was definitely worth the experience, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of the bottle. Not all at once, of course. but you know what I mean. That's enough. So until next time, as always, cheers.